I lay there, the soft glow of the moon filtering through the curtains, casting a silvery light across the room. The sheets felt cool against my skin, but my body was still humming, warm and alive from the night I had just experienced. My heart was steady now, but not so long ago it had been racing. I smiled softly, feeling the weight of him still next to me, his breathing deep and even, a reminder of how everything felt so right in that moment. It had started quietly, almost unexpectedly. We had spent the day together, doing the usual things, talking, laughing, being close in that way we always were. But there was an unspoken tension building throughout the day, an invisible thread pulling us closer, tighter, with every passing hour. I could feel it in the way his eyes lingered on mine a little longer, how his hand rested just a bit lower on my back when he guided me through the door. By the time we got home, the air between us was charged, but neither of us rushed. That was the thing about him, he never rushed. He knew me too well. He knew how to make every moment last, how to let the anticipation build until I felt like I couldn't take it anymore, like I needed him to touch me, to close the distance between us. We'd eaten dinner, talked about our day, but underneath the surface, I could feel the current shifting. He was sitting across from me at the table, his eyes on me, warm and intense, and I could feel my pulse quicken under his gaze. It wasn't anything he said, it was the way he looked at me, like he could see right through the surface, into the parts of me that I usually kept hidden from the world. With him, I never felt the need to hide. I remember the moment he stood up and came over to me, offering his hand. There was something about that gesture so simple, yet filled with intent, that made my breath catch. I took it without hesitation, letting him pull me up from the chair. He didn't say a word as he led me into the living room, his hand firm and steady in mine. The world outside seemed to fade away as the only thing that mattered was the space between us, closing with each step. We stopped in the middle of the room, and he turned to face me. His eyes were dark, filled with something that made my heart race. He reached up, brushing a stray strand of hair away from my face, and I felt my body react to his touch, a subtle shiver running down my spine. "You're beautiful," he whispered, his voice low, almost reverent. I smiled, but it was the kind of smile that's born out of vulnerability, the kind that comes when someone sees you completely, and you can't help but let them in. His hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me closer, and then his lips were on mine, soft, slow, but filled with a hunger that matched my own. The kiss deepened, and I felt the world tilt slightly as his arms wrapped around me, pulling me against him. I could feel the steady beat of his heart, and it was in sync with mine, both of us caught in this moment that was both tender and electric. His hands moved over my back, exploring, teasing, and every touch sent a ripple of heat through me, awakening something deeper. I wanted him. I needed him. But what made it more intense, more overwhelming, was the way he made me feel not just desired, but cherished. Every kiss, every touch was a reminder that this was more than just physical, it was a connection, a bond that ran deeper than anything I'd ever experienced before. When he pulled back, his eyes searched mine, as if asking for permission to continue. Even though we both knew where this was going, there was something incredibly intimate about that, about the way he checked in with me, making sure we were in this together, fully present in every moment. We moved to the bedroom slowly, our bodies brushing against each other, every step filled with a quiet kind of urgency. By the time we reached the bed, my skin was already tingling with anticipation. He stood in front of me, and there was a brief moment of stillness as we both caught our breath, letting the gravity of what was about to happen settle in. His hands moved to the hem of my shirt, and with one gentle tug, it was gone, leaving my skin exposed to the cool air. He followed suit, his shirt falling to the floor, and when our bare skin touched, it felt like a spark, igniting something deep inside me. His hands were everywhere on my waist, my back, sliding over my arms, and I could feel the heat of his breath on my neck as he kissed his way down, taking his time, savoring every inch of me. I gasped when his lips found the hollow of my throat, my head tilting back as he kissed me there, his fingers tracing lazy circles on my lower back. Every touch felt like fire, and I could feel my body arching into him, needing more, needing him closer. The next moments blurred together in a haze of sensation, his hands moving lower, sliding down my hips, pulling me against him, his mouth finding mine again in a kiss that was both fierce and tender. We fell onto the bed, tangled in each other, and I felt like I was floating, lost in the way his body moved against mine, the way his breath quickened in sync with mine. He made me feel weightless, like every touch, every kiss was pulling me higher, closer to something beyond just pleasure. It was in the way he held me, the way he whispered my name against my skin, like I was the only thing in the world that mattered to him in that moment. And when we finally came together, it wasn't just about the physical act, it was the culmination of everything we'd shared. Every look, every touch, every whispered word. It was slow at first, deliberate, as if he wanted to make sure we savored every second. But as the tension built between us, the pace quickened, and I could feel the wave of pleasure building inside me, threatening to pull me under. I clung to him, my fingers digging into his shoulders, feeling the heat of his skin beneath my hands. Every movement, every breath was in sync, and as we reached the peak together, it felt like time itself had stopped, like nothing existed outside of this moment. When it was over, we collapsed into each other, breathless and spent, our bodies still entwined. He kissed my forehead, his lips soft against my skin, and I felt a deep sense of contentment settle over me. We lay there in the quiet, our limbs tangled together, the weight of the night still heavy in the air. I could hear his heart beating, steady and strong, and I knew in that moment that this wasn't just a night I would remember. It was a night that had changed something between us, something that went beyond words. As I lay there, wrapped in his arms, I realized that it wasn't just the passion, the intimacy that made this night unforgettable. It was the way he made me feel seen, understood, and cherished in a way I had never experienced before. And as I drifted off to sleep, my body still warm from his touch, I knew that this was just the beginning of something deeper, something real.